2024 meeting of the Fairfax County Architectural Review Board. First, to bring this meeting into order, we have to do a few procedural items. One in particular, because we have a member participating remotely, we need to do verification that we can hear them and they can hear us. All right, so verification that each member participating remotely, we're going to confirm that the remote participant's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for the meeting room. And that person needs to confirm their location and that the remote participation comports with our policy. So, Board Member Plumpy, can you please state for the record your location and reason for participating remotely?
Yes, not a problem. I am participating remotely from my residence in Fairfax Station, Virginia, and hear you loud and clear. And hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, and you're participating due to
I'm sorry.
Pretty much the policy. You don't have to go into details.
Yes, I am participating remote as acceptable with the board policy regulations.
Thank you, sir. All right, I now need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Board Member Plumpy can be clearly heard and that his remote participation comports with our policy.
All right, the motion, is there a second? Second by Ms. Floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, next, the ARB needs to determine how long each member of the public will be able to speak during public comment periods. The public will be allowed to comment after consent agenda items and after each action item as the standard ARB practice. I look for a motion for setting our public speaker time. Mr. Burns.
Mr. Chairman, I move that each member of the public have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Murray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion passed. All right. Last but not least, notification that this meeting is being recorded and that the recording will be posted in 10 days. All the administrative things out of the way, and that brings us to every one of our meetings. We start with reading the statement of purpose and intent of the historic overlay districts, and Mr. Burns has so graciously offered to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Historic overlay districts are created for the purpose of promoting the general welfare, education, economic prosperity, and recreational pleasure of the public through the perpetuation of those general areas or individual structures and premises that have been officially designated by the Board of Supervisors having historical, cultural, architectural, or archaeological significance. Regulations within such districts are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such areas, structures, and premises, to encourage uses which will lead to their continuance, conservation, and improvement in a manner appropriate to the preservation of the cultural, social, economic, political, architectural, or archaeological heritage of the county, to prevent creation of environmental influences adverse to such purposes, and to ensure that new structures and uses within such districts will be in keeping with the character to be preserved and enhanced.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns. All right, a few more housekeeping items. So order for which items will be heard will be set at the meeting once we approve the agenda. Additional items can be added to the agenda at the discretion of the chair. For applicants here for an initial and follow-up presentation that are submitting material appropriate, we ask that you keep your presentation, if you are a first-time presenter, to roughly about 8 minutes. If it is a follow-up presentation, 3 minutes is the ask, that it's the limits of time really being expected for the presentation, not for the conversation following the presentation. And after every action item and consent item, I will ask if there's a member of the public that has any comments. If so, please raise your hand, let me know, and I will make sure to call on you. With that in mind, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda, noting that our agenda is modified from the one that was submitted previously by Daniel. So you would note that we're approving the agenda as provided for today. Mr. Kalinsky.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve the agenda that was provided today for the April 11th, 2024 ARB meeting.
All right, do we have a second? Second by Mr. Zellman. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Already talked through the time limits on presentations. Daniel, do we have any Yes, we need to introduce and recognize. Everyone's here for something on the agenda. Great. That brings us into our consent calendar action items. We only have one item on the consent calendar, so there's no presentation. Obviously, there is the opportunity for discussion if anyone wishes to discuss it. I look if there's any member. No discussion. So if not, I look for, if there any member of the public has comments on this one? Yes, that is true. Thank you, Mr. Kalinsky. I'm getting too hyped up on my water. Sorry there. The item for consent calendar action is ARB 24 ROV 04 12221 Hoops Head Road new construction. This is a proposal for a construction of a two-story residence. Ron Falk represents the application. This was one that we saw at the January 2024 workshop, and then again at the March 2024 meeting, when we required a submission of cut sheets and material selections, which were provided as part of the submission. I'll ask one more time if there's any board member comments on this one. Seeing any, I don't see any members of the public. Any comments? So I would entertain a motion. Mr. Zone, you got your hand ready.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve consent item ARB 24 ROB 04 located at 12221 Hopes Head Road, Fairfax, tax map 0673010032 in the Roby's Mill Historic Overlay District for the proposed construction of a two-story residence is submitted and presented at the April 11th, 2024 ARB meeting. My review of the materials was found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 Historic Overlay District.
Motion, is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Orr. All those in favor? Aye. I think I saw an aye from Mr. Plumpy as well, with the hand raised. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, if not, the motion carries. All right. That brings us through our consent calendar items. With that being completed, we go to items for action. Our first item for action is ARB 24 LOR 07 8780 Lorton Road Brick Rehabilitation. This is within the Lorton Laurel Hill MOA eligible area. The applicant is proposing to replace bricks, repoint mortar, remove vegetation and efflorescence, and improve drainage on the Lorton Barrel Bridge. Debbie Robinson's application.
Debbie Robinson with SWSG. I brought the photos we shared last time in the workshop, and also the plans are on here if you want to refer to them. Changes made to the plans since the workshop. We're proposing some testing areas for finding the gentlest means possible for the cleaning. We've provided 2 products recommended by the manufacturer for those particular types of uses on historic masonry. We added some requirements for qualifications for the masonry contractor, also that he prepare a maintenance plan for future maintenance of the bridge. We included a repair sequence and also some drainage details on adding some clay for more of an impervious material between the pavement and the parapet of the bridge to keep water from draining down into the barrel. That's pretty much the changes that we made.
Okay, thank you for keeping it short and sweet. Any members of the public comment on this? Seeing any, so I would look to board members for comments and questions on the application. Mr. Burns.
Thank you for the changes that were added to the construction drawing set. I appreciate that. Just a couple of comments. I applaud the fact that you specify in removing loose and damaged mortar that use hand tools. I might encourage you to add a caveat that you specifically forbidding the use of machine tools, clear out the mortar to an adequate depth for the repointing. It's great to say use hand tools, but if you just simply add the phrase, don't use mechanical means of having the water back, that would be very helpful. And then I also applaud the fact that you've asked for 48 hours advance notice for commencing on testing and stuff like that. And that made me wonder, who in the park authority is the qualified person to determine whether or not the contractor is meeting the specs that you've included in the drawing set?
I don't know if they'll have David Bukta come out and look at it. I know that when I was here last time, you wanted perhaps Daniel to come and take a look at it so that they were supposed to notify him when that work was done or in case somebody else wanted to.
Because,
take a
I
look at
think
it.
it's all well and good to have all the stuff in the specs. But then we need some confidence that the follow through is that the specs will be followed in the execution of the work. And I'm asking that the park authority take some steps to have someone who's knowledgeable about whether or not they're following the specifications properly to be there for those inspections.
I will certainly convey that to them.
Yeah.
They're not here today.
Thank you.
Any other? I would agree with Mr. Burns on that point. I would suggest that we consider making it a modification. I stopped. A modification on our approval is that the park authority, designates an appropriate point of contact that be brought out to inspect any of those mock-ups or order pointing examples that, because I trust we'll convey it, but I think maybe if we convey it as that modification, we might make an expectation upon our approval that they'll do that. That'd have been my only other comment. And I, again, appreciate the thought as well about the roadway and the clay proposal too, because I think that was something, it may have been Ms. Hammock that brought up, that was talking about, what is the cause of all the problems that were going to be happening? Are we just, putting a Band-Aid on what is going to be a problem a few more years down the line again, or is this something that we can do some preventive maintenance for? So I was appreciative of that as well. No, I look for a motion from the ARP member. Mr. Burns.
I stuck my neck out, so, okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve action item ARB-24-LOR-07 located at 8780 Lorton Road, Lorton, tax map 1073010019, the Lorton Laurel Hill MOA eligible area for the proposed bridge improvements as submitted and presented at the April 11, 2024 meeting, subject to the following modifications. One, that a statement that mechanical tools shall not be used to remove loose mortar. And also that the county stipulate that a qualified person be available at all times to inspect test work in areas duly exposed to this work to assure compliance with the specifications. You guys get that? Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of the memorandum of agreement of the Lorton Laurel Hill eligible district and zoning ordinance 3101 historic overlay districts.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Mangum. All right, a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. Joe, just for the record, I want to confirm, you have a comment and I'm not catching it. Please feel free to come off mute and say something.
I'm so sorry. I will.
I'm going to apologize for it. I just want to make sure I always welcome your insightful thoughts. All right, our next
No problem.
item for action is ARB 24-HOL-09. It is 1921 Marcos Road deck replacement. This is placed in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District, and the applicant is proposing to I'll get, I know. It's proposing to extend an existing deck in replacement of railings. Ms. Conley's representing the application, but before we can get to their presentation, Ms. Burns, you have a statement. Thank you.
I, John Burns, under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3112B1 and 2.2-3115H, declare my personal interest in transactions brought before the Architectural Review Board involving the Holland Hills HOD, and specifically state the following for the April 11, 2024 ARB meeting. 1. Action item ARB 24 HOL 09, 1921 Martha's Road deck. Workshop item ARB 24 HOL 07WS 2208 Glasgow Road additions involve the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District. 2, the nature of my personal interest is that I own and reside in a home that is valued at over $5,000 and is located in the Holland Hills HOD. 3, I am a member of a group of 3 or more persons who are members of which are affected by the transaction. And 4, I am able to participate in the transactions fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Need to find out where exactly I want to put that in the format of these items, because I can never find the right place.
Yeah.
Say that.
Is that
All
a
right,
lot-
thank you.
is
Thank
that
you,
a lot
ladies.
of words to say you're a neighbor? Nice to meet you.
Oh, but-
Downhill neighbors.
Sure. I'm Jennifer Horn with Horn and Company. This is Shira Elstrom, our client and resident in Holland Hills. We thank you for all your time and attention and guidance in submitting this. There's an existing deck. I believe we've got some imagery as well through this documentation. It's rather small. We want to extend the existing footprint of the deck. If you look at the images in the center top image, we want to pull more deck towards the back of the property. There won't be a presence of the addition from the street. And on the side, there's a decent amount of screening. So I don't think from the side, you're going to see a big impact from that as well. You also see that there's sort of a kind of a prefab black metal vertical post picket. And we'd like to propose an alternate rail, which is a horizontal cable that feels a little more contemporary. And while it's certainly not mid-century, probably a little more relevant to the, in the inspirations of the architecture than the sort of typical black vertical metal, prefab post and rail assembly. So that's essentially all we want to do. Everything will be seamless with what has already been built and previously approved.
All right. Thank you for keeping it short and sweet. Any members of the public that have a comment on this one? Any members of the public that have a comment? So then I would turn to our board members for questions and comments on this application. Ms. Hammack.
Did the board approve the existing deck?
It was
Yeah.
before the.
Okay, so
Before the
you just
ARB.
said-
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. Permitted.
The Holland Hills review.
Yeah.
Design review, we have
They-
another one.
I'm not comfortable with the horizontal metal railing. I just don't see, we've looked at other railings in the district. Granted, I believe those railings were visible from a street when we said it wasn't appropriate. And so I just don't want to approve it on a rear deck either, because then we get into what's visible and the vegetation changes so much around here. Some things are visible during some time. Anyway, I think, I don't think it needs to be an exact historic replica of a railing since it's not on the primary elevation. But I don't like the horizontal rope.
Daniel? Mr.
Yes,
Daniel?
yes, Ms. Murray.
Haven't we already approved that kind of railing in the front of houses in Holland Hills? Thank you.
There's several. I actually looked at my other neighbors.
That's what I
do.
And with them.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Kolinsky.
And I don't, speaking for myself, just a little unclear on the genesis of this. It looks like you have a half-built deck already. When I look at the pictures, there's no rail.
Yeah,
Rail.
the black
Yeah,
rail
the black is the
in the
rail.
photos.
So that it comes into the front?
Yeah.
Oh, you just can't.
So I'm looking at the third one down in the center.
I don't know
I see
why
it
you can't
being-
see a rail in there.
That's,
They probably were older. We were showing that
Oh,
for
the
the
old
framing and they were
pictures?
older pictures before the rail was installed. So I apologize for that confusion.
On top of like,
the top
don't know.
left shows
Yeah.
the
it just
rail.
doesn't appear to be a finished deck. It almost looks like it was a deck in progress. And maybe it was. I'm just asking for some background because
Yeah, so
when I look at this, it looks like something that was being built and stopped and was asked to be, okay, so.
so this is actually, this is that side right there. This is the current
That's an
finish.
earlier picture.
That's right.
Yeah, that's an earlier picture.
And we had used
That's-
those,
Show the back.
Does the framing still, the beam that supports the center in the middle, if you scroll down a little bit? Scroll up, scroll up. Either, or, but that beam that projects beyond, that's the way it was originally built
Mhm.
Yeah,
and it's still projecting beyond or?
yeah.
I'd
like to hear what that is.
Review.
Understood.
Yeah,
That would go away with the-
that would go
Yes.
away, yes. Yeah.
So the deck itself now is.
Is railed and complete.
Yeah.
It's there. What about like the second picture down on the left? The rail stops. Are there stairs that are there right now?
The ground is right
The
there.
grade,
actually.
that's
You
at
can't-
grade.
Yeah. Like, where you can't, right here, the ground is like right there and it's on an angle to the ground. Here. Yeah, it's like right there.
So the 30-inch
So there's no
clearance.
guardrail because it's less than 30.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And you just chose in the deck, the original deck.
Oh, no.
Just leave that open.
We did not. It's that the original contractor didn't put the gate on from the last deck. No, that was not a
The deck
choice.
does look kind of new, like.
Yeah, how about that? This is a bit of contention with me and the prior contractor who died, so we're just gonna, yeah.
That's the,
Yeah, it's very sad, but my deck also needs, well, I mean, it did get a gate. Yeah.
Mr. Daniel, I have a question.
Mr.
Joe?
Lumpy, go right ahead.
Yes, looking at your deck pictures and plan and so forth, couple questions. On your construction drawings on sheet, the one that has the decking plan on,
Mhm.
which is sheet L801.
Mhm.
And it says on the framing plan, it says posted line with existing deck. Now, you've proposed, is that an existing post that you're showing or a proposed post beside the existing post that's in the ground?
It'd be a
Right now,
proposed post. I don't think we would
Okay.
have,
Okay, so basically you'll have two posts really close together at the end of at the
That's
middle
right.
of the deck. Right, okay. And then I'm a little concerned, and I don't see a dimension on it, is what your spacing of your joy star. Do you know what they are? Is it 16 inches, 2 feet? Because that seems like a pretty long span. I'm just trying to help you constructability wise.
sure. I
To prevent
believe there's
flexing?
16.
Okay, 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see, so approximately it's a quarter inch. I don't have a scale drawing in front of me, but quarter inch, so that's 3. That's 18. So 16 is be 3 feet, 3 feet.
Okay.
6, 7. I just out of curiosity, if you would consider, and the architects could chime in too, to make a very firm deck, because you could have some flexing in the middle there because it's a good span. I'm wondering if you would entertain having a middle post between the two proposed posts, just to make that deck very rigid, because I'm sure you have a lot of dancing on that deck. It's big enough to have a square.
I mean, that's the
Um,
goal.
Yeah, so I think you may want to consider that. I know you kind of leave the deck, which is great, so the posts are kind of hidden at the end. And I think the underside of the deck, if those pictures you show, you have also an air conditioner that's underneath it. That's right beside the deck, existing deck now that will be covered by this. So are you going to move your air conditioner, your compressor for the air conditioner out from underneath that deck, which may be advisable so it can have proper circulation? I don't know the proper code clearance so that it can perform well.
We consulted with the specs and there's, per the specifications of the handlers. Oh, can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
We
I
should
can hear
have
you, Chris.
adequate airflow. Without
Okay.
that, from what we've understood by looking at the specs, we could
Okay.
certainly confirm with the fabricators, but there's quite a bit of circulations were
fine.
there.
That's great. I just wanted to caution you to that, but my only concern here again is make sure that your contractor or yourselves would like to have the deck solid, rock solid, because, it's a large deck. I got a feeling there's gonna be a lot of activity up there, you know what I mean? Jumping up and down and whatnot, just.
Well,
caution to win.
we're middle-aged, to be honest. We don't.
Yeah, but middle age have grandkids, but that's all I want to say. And personally, I have no problem with the deck railing. I kind of like the railing, the horizontal look. So so I have no other comments. And actually, I do. Any treatment to the underside of the deck? Are you painting it, or is it going to say natural wood? Let
No,
it
it'll
go.
be natural wood, no rain escape systems.
Benefit.
Okay. I assume you'll just have mulch or gravel underneath it, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympia. Ms. Moore?
So identify for yourself at least the composite material that you're using, because they will specify the spacing requirement.
Sure, of course.
Because it's rare that it's 24 inches. And that better show up, or else your contractor's gonna put the wrong spacing in.
16, you mean.
16.
That's what we have, 16.
Oh, it is? I
Yeah.
didn't see it written somewhere.
Sorry, no, it is, we use the Fairfax County standard deck specifications, but I would presume for this load, we're gonna be doing 16, and we'll have the contractor match what's already there. So, and the framing is 16.
Okay, yeah, because you kind of leave it open for him by just putting the charts on there, but. I
Understood.
Wouldn't do that. I tell him exactly.
Yeah, and we've had a contractor that we've worked with quite a bit who's very good.
Okay.
And he's inspected the decking. Understands he's to match the framing continuously. I like Joe's or Mr. Plumby's suggestion of adding an additional post. I think that makes sense. So I think that
Yeah.
we do have a very trusted living contractor.
It was great.
So,
Great. Any other comment, Mr. Burns?
Yeah, to provide some context, I forget who asked about did we approve this from. There was kind of a rush just before the HUD went into effect with people wanting to get things approved by the local community. This issue. I believe this project was one of those that came in not very far in advance of the HUD coming into effect. And so that's why part of this looks like it's under construction still. But it does look like now construction has started because the railing is down.
Oh, no, that's before the railing went up, actually. That was the,
Okay.
yeah.
when we came to meet Shira for the first time, the railing wasn't up. When we took all of our site visits, and this has
been a long process.
Okay, well, I understand
Yeah.
why you have an interruption of a major player. As
Yeah.
the way things do go, the schedule goes a little sideways. One of the things that concerns me is the railing gate that you said was never installed. Is from your pictures, it looks as though that's quite a hot panel.
Oh, it's not. It's like this.
And the one looks like much larger than that in the photographs that you
Yeah.
shared with us. We're only looking at what you shared.
Could
Yeah.
you go to the plan? We can,
And it looks like a steeper. So
Yeah.
what I'm asking is,
It's not, but there's going
Will
to be
there
a gate
be-
on this one.
okay,
That
will there be a stair?
There won't be a stair because it's really short.
Oh.
Okay, will there be a path or is it just step down to grass? Or-
It steps down onto a path that goes around the front.
Okay.
Yeah.
But 'cause I don't see any evidence of that in the drawings.
Can I just briefly,
Absolutely.
the photo is taken up right above the proposed deck. And what you're seeing as the hop is over here. And this is where you're stepping down to grade. So the rail continues beyond, you just don't see it in that perspective, but your step down is closer to the back of that photo that you don't really see in the angle that the photo was taken at. So I think when you're looking underneath the deck, you're seeing where it starts to zero out to grade, but you're not seeing the full extent of it. So that's why it appears to be, but it's still 30 inches in that area, but it looks like it's more because you start to see it at a turn.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. I'm not there.
Well, you're a neighbor. You can come
I'm
over.
not gonna go wandering. And it is, the topography goes up to the house and then starts.
that's correct.
quite dramatically back.
It does. I mean, this topo line comes through the house and out here. And then you can see even by the front door, you're climbing almost 10 feet.
It's
Sorry, 5 feet.
It's one of those houses where the it's built into the hill so that the second floor is upstairs and the,
Yeah, no questions about that. Then the other thing is there's no indication if there'll be any lighting on this deck.
We weren't anticipating any under,
yeah, I mean, there's lighting from the house, like the outside the door onto the deck.
Will there
There's
be like
like the,
exterior fixtures, will there be lights under the rail?
we don't have an undercap light under the rail, but yeah.
it sounds
Well,
nice.
That's the purpose
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
Question is to find
so
out.
there's like on the house right now, there's lights. Like there's lights that go here and here. There's lights that go out onto the deck.
Okay,
Yeah.
But now you're extending it against.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, honestly, it's really still not that big of a deck. Like the whole deck is like, less than
in the interior of the
this.
space.
Yeah.
And there's windows. I think,
Oh, yeah, there's windows against the
Yeah,
half of the
on the
deck.
half of the
But
deck.
it, I mean, the whole deck is not even this size.
So you do not envision extra lighting.
Well, I mean, now that you raise it, it sounds like something maybe down the line, but it sounds nice.
But as
It
at least
wasn't
as
part of the
submitted, it's
plan.
not.
It's not,
as
yeah,
submitted.
it's not in this
Submitted.
plan, but it might be in the next.
Sometimes we have things come in where, oh, yes, we're also doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have any
Do you have
lighting
any other
plans that
kind?
include that.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
very clear on what it is you're asking us to.
yeah,
approve.
no, this is the,
That is it.
this is the plan.
The extension of the deck.
Yeah.
And I would also recommend Mr. Pumpy's suggestion of an additional post,
Mhm.
specific things. And it appears as though the most uphill outside post is an 8x8. And the more close post, looking at the photographs, appears to be maybe a 6x6. So that is going to be the midspan of the extended deck. You might consider making that an 8x8.
We'll field measure and confirm that if there are different sizes.
But
And
the posts you have
Yeah.
in the photographs, it appears that, I guess it's the center photograph in the second column. You see that the uphill post appears to be larger. And that's just my perception. It could be simply perspective diminution.
It,
Make it appear that way.
sure,
Make sure that you've got adequate, not just
yeah,
adequate stiffening and such so that
yeah. To be honest,
that will not be real balancing.
Yeah.
Because I think that will be a little unsettling if you want.
absolutely. And we'll field measure. I've walked around there so many times and I feel like I would have noticed it if the post was a different size, but we'll confirm. And if it's not, then we would definitely supplement it.
So I agree, Mr. Burns, Mr. Columbia, about the post suggestion. They're more knowledgeable than I am, but I think if the ARB decides to move to approve this, they would likely with some modifications required as part of it, the post being one of them, would be that I would ask that a current set of photos as well as
Absolutely.
be provided to ARB staff. Because I think as they are right now,
It's confusing.
given that they're a time span, I mean,
Yeah,
talking through it, it makes sense, but,
for the record.
for the record, I think it needs to be
Yeah.
better to see what's there and what the document we are approving is going to modify.
There's a good chance I have them right now on a computer, but we could certainly provide them immediately. So would it make?
I think from my perspective, you've explained enough that I understand it, but from a administrative record
Understood.
perspective,
Yeah, yeah.
as a federal employee, that's just something I just love. I want to make sure it's really well documented in the paperwork that we have when Daniel actually gets the stamp and everything.
Absolutely.
I have a question. So are you saying like another post like in between where these two are? Like there?
That is my understanding as to what
Yeah.
Mr. Burns is saying.
Is that
Asking
what
me
you
is the
know?
last person you should ask. Same, that's why you shouldn't ask me.
No.
It's under the beams, not under. And,
Oh.
yeah, it's not in the middle that way, in the middle
No,
that
it's
way.
the,
Oh,
the length of it.
You just. the
Got it.
charts that they give you, just
Well, I,
be conservative with the chart.
Yeah.
You know, you know.
Yes. Are you kidding? I mean, honestly, we've built decks in the county and we've gotten them permitted and then the inspector has had us beef up everything on site. So we try to avoid that kind of a change order during construction.
Right.
And sometimes the inspectors surprise us.
Right, and I
Mr.
think-
Daniel? Hi,
Okay,
this is Joe.
yes.
Yeah,
Sir.
hey, I was gonna say, my comment, just, we're talking about adding posts, my comment was to add the post between the two new posts proposed, not on the existing. That's, I wanna make sure that's not forgotten about, that's all.
Or in the row. So in the row, have more posts.
On your proposed drawing,
Right there.
That makes sense.
yeah, on the frame, you go to the framing plan, deck framing plan, one above. And
Go up.
the plan above it, and that's where, that's it. Yeah, you got it. And there'd be two posts added, one in on the, yeah, you got it, exactly. So it'd be a total of 6 posts versus 4. And I know it's even still attached to the ledger of the house. The existing deck does not have that beam that's up against, that's very close to the house. That does not exist on that. It just has the ledger strip and it spans out to the post away from the house. Just observation. You notice that on your pictures? You only
Right,
have
missed-
one, you only have one beam on your
The
existing.
one ledger beam. I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
to show the overlap.
Yeah, so you do not have that beam that's closest to the house on your existing deck. And you can always add that for even more stability, but you do have a ledger strip there. I think that'll be fun. But I think just as the deck gets larger and bigger, I think there's gonna be more activity. But again, when you're out there, change order.
Partier, right?
Exactly. You can always, yeah, there you go. You can always add another beam, just extend that beam that you propose closest to the house towards your door, and I think you'll be super duper. You can drive a truck on it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Plumpy. I was only just gonna add that I think we have struggled with railings at Holland Hills in general, but I do think I do like the concept you're proposing in lieu of what, in other situations, it's kind of there isn't an ideal solution necessarily, but I think we've shown that we're okay and comfortable with that proposal, at least in some of the other ones. That's all my only thoughts. If there's any other person that has thoughts on this one. Entertain a motion, likely with modifications. Mr. Melvin.
I was taking notes. See how I did. Mr. Chairman, I move the ARB approve action item ARB 24-HOL-09 located at 1921 Martha's Road, Alexandria. Tax map 0934050144 in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District. Proposed deck construction is submitted and presented at the April 11, 2024 ARB meeting, subject to the following modifications. First, that a current set of photos of the deck be provided to DPD staff. Second, that 2 posts be added between the new proposed posts as identified on the framing plan that was submitted with the materials. Upon reviewing the materials and with their proposed modifications, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 historic overlay districts.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Murray. Any discussion on that motion?
A question to follow up on, another comment. Do we need to ask them to specify the roof spacing? How's the decking?
So it's nowhere on the plans?
We have it through the schedule. We use the
They have the
county
County schedule. But the comment you made is that you're going to match the
16.
existing.
We can update that to call it out.
I don't see it as necessary. And I don't think that the structure of this is our purview, short of it sagging and falling down.
Well,
If they're following
composite decking needs
Well, if they're following the
closer
menu,
spacing.
I mean, I would think that the
Manufacturer specs.
would want to follow the proper construction techniques and the manufacturer specifications
Okay.
for that.
Mr. Chairman, I will withdraw my comment.
Okay. All right. No.
Second the motion.
No? Are we not
Wait,
there?
30 seconds. We were in discussion.
All right.
Thank you, anyone.
I apologize. You're right, Ms. Murray.
We have a motion,
It's been tripled.
by Mr. Zell, seconded by Ms. Murray. We have this, I felt I had a feeling there would be discussion on it.
Okay, I apologize.
No, it's quite all right. So, motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? None, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you so much. This was, this submission process was so much easier. Okay,
Wow.
we do a lot. We're not naming any other municipalities.
Joe wants to know when the party is.
I'll bring the music.
That's all praise for our staff. It's their work there. All right, that takes us out of items for action and brings us into items for workshop. We have one workshop item. ARB 24-1207 West, 2208 Glasgow Road, and this is an additions project, Fallen Hills Historic Overlay District. They're proposing construction on the front and rear additions. Christine Kelly represents the application. We've seen this one time before,
This was
correct?
here at a previous workshop, and we're back for a second workshop. And I'd like to introduce Judy England Joseph, my client, and Ed Joseph, sitting in the gallery. We thought it would be good for everyone to be here to talk about the project and where we left off from the previous workshop and where we are now. So I'd like to just take you through a quick recap of the photos of the existing house in Holland Hills on Inner Glasgow Road. And from now, between our last meeting and now, we've reduced the project in size. I don't know if you remember, but off the back of the carport, we originally had a workshop and we were expanding all the way across the back of the house. And we've cut that down as well. So we have a much smaller addition on the front and the back. Next slide, please. This is the existing house, and the existing house has several additions on it, and we're adding a new addition. The carport was added in the 80s. Judy, do you think? It was?
Probably late 80s before we bought it.
As well as the front addition was also of that era. And as we move around the side, next slide, please. That's a better photo of the existing addition. And the next slide is the carport. And the next one, another just close up of the existing addition. And then this little, the bump out on the end, this was actually an addition of that same era. So the house has 3 additions on it already. And I'll take you another view of the north side. And then coming around the back of the house are the way that the back lot is designed. It's hard to get a good shot of the back, but you can continue to the next slide. I'm showing you the windows along the back that we're not touching that part of the house. We're leaving those windows intact, just based on the feedback from our last meeting. And that's a shot of the side of the carport. This is the existing floor plan, showing you the carport, the existing carport, the existing addition, and then this area down here is also an addition all done in the 80s. And the next slide shows the addition that we're proposing, which is the family room and then expanding the bedrooms and bathroom off the back of the house. And I'd like to let Judy talk a little bit about why we're adding the new space.
Yeah, I have a 95-year-old mom and she's healthy right now, but I'm anticipating in the next, well, now I'm going to say 2 years. I was saying 3 years a year ago when we first started this process, but we need to have a place where she can move in. And the 2 back bedrooms, Holland Hill bedrooms, are very tiny. So I needed to bump out the back wall of the 2 back bedrooms, one to include an ensuite bathroom and a walk-in closet that would enable her to bring her stuff there. I'm anticipating that she may not be mobile, but without assistance. And that's why, yeah, we're trying to make sure that she has not just accessibility, but an area that she can spend time in without us. And so our current living room would probably be the area that she could spend time in. We do not have a family room. And that's why we wanted to enclose the area that is currently a deck and make it a family room so that my husband and I and our now 2 young grandchildren can have a space to play when great grandma is doing something in the living room. The family room that we're talking about, the addition, the reason it's a little larger is because we need stairs. We'd like to go down. It's on a hill. So we're not digging deep below the family room, but we'd like some storage. We have no storage. And so we would like to have storage. And because I gave up the studio behind the garage because somebody was concerned about the size of our renovation, I'm an artist. I will work in the basement. If I can have that basement.
We can go to the next slide. Show the lower, here's the lower level.
It would be storage and workspace for us with a sliding glass door out there so we could get some natural light. So that's what we're asking for. Thanks.
Have the next slide, please. Based on the feedback from our previous workshop, we've redesigned the addition to reflect more of the elements of the original Holland Hills house. We're coming up now with this style of shed roof. This is the existing addition that's there. And the deck off to the side. We feel like the butterfly is a little bit of a gesture towards the original house. We're just letting the 80s addition be what it is. And next slide, please. And then coming around the side, the butterfly roof extends up and we have doors out to the deck with transoms above the doors. And then on the back of the house, we're coming up with the butterfly off of the original, well, the addition added onto the original house. So it's following the angles of the existing roof line. And then the next slide, please. And then on the back, this is the bedroom and bathroom addition with the Holland Hills module windows with transoms up above. And then I've included a few little screenshots of the modeling to help you visualize how it all fits within the existing. Your comments, thoughts.
This is a workshop. We don't have to take questions from the public. And obviously, since it's a workshop, it's meant to be more of a dialogue or discussion. So we're not taking something up for review right now. So I would look to any board members with thoughts and observations on the restaurant. Anyway.
It's like speaking first, but much as I might try people. I really appreciate you coming today because it's really nice to meet property owners. And you've been a steward of this building, this historic building for, it sounds like 30 years.
We've lived there since 95.
Okay.
So those other additions were before us. We haven't touched the.
Yes, but you've maintained this home beautifully regardless of those.
I did notice that our yard needs work and I
The board has only been regulating Holland Hills for a short period of time, so I appreciate what you've done for the property all these decades. And I also, although it's not an appropriateness argument for approval, I appreciate you sharing your family story. Because it does explain why you're doing what you're doing. And I think it's really great that potentially, your mom will be with you and the grandkids. And actually my mother-in-law is in a wheelchair and my husband and I bought a split level ranch, the same thing in mind, potentially one day. So I can't speak about my father-in-law, but maybe my mother-in-law. So anyway, so I appreciate that. And I love that you've kept the bank of windows. I love the shade of gray they're painted. You don't regulate paint color. But I think they're really lovely. I think that's a lovely space with the deck and everything. And I like that you've kept the 80s edition in the front, even though it's not historic. But that's probably because what's the expression? You like your grandmother's wedding dress, you hate your mom's. So potentially I'm, due to my age, I don't mind that 80s edition as much as some others. I like the butterfly roof addition to the design. So yeah, I think it's improved and I don't have any really negative feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members? Lindsay?
Anybody else's? Looking at it from an appropriateness perspective, the house has already been touched several times along the way. Everything on the left-hand side, looking at the plan from the front, everything on the left-hand side has kind of been covered up, extended and altered. And that's where the new addition is going, at least from the most visible part of the street. One more slide.
Have one more.
Well, and there, so those 4 windows were part of the original structure,
That's-
right?
The
Yes.
whole living room, dining room basically stays intact. Yeah.
And you're not touching those 3 walls from or from those windows
Correct, right.
to the right. So you have the addition from the 80s, circa 80s, in the kitchen. Now you're playing off of that with the new addition. I like the fact that you're forward of that. But you're not keeping the same plane, you're breaking that plane. I think that helps break it up a lot. And when that addition turns the corner, it also breaks the plane also. Now, the back, you may be touching a little bit of, a couple of feet of historic
A little, couple of feet, yes.
on, to the left of the living room. Well, there we go. So you're gonna lose 2 or 3 of those windows there? Go back.
Yeah, go back.
Please.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I mean, if that were in the front, I'd be more concerned. It being in the back, I'm not as concerned. And as I read it, it looks like you're probably gonna have to get a special exception to do the addition in the back.
Yes, that's correct.
There's for lot coverage.
No, it looks like it's based, the house kind of angled on the property, and the property does go downhill, which kind of minimizes things from the street also, but with that, I don't think there's enough rear yard setback. The only thing I see that would make this better is if you had some sort of plane break on your left-hand wall, of the
Okay.
plan of your master bedroom wall
All right.
to your new rear bedroom here.
Okay.
Even if it were, a foot or half a foot, something, I realize that the need for the interior space and that you're respecting the original lines of the bedroom walls and the doors, and hallway on the inside.
Go to one of the elevations further down.
Just come- Yeah. we'll come across that.
One more. Right here.
Yeah, so where your butterfly or your shed roof comes back into your hip roof there,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, your gable roof there. If there was some
So we
sort of
might not need that we might not need that one window if that's part of what you're talking about.
No, I just think if you have a vertical break,
We just
in the
offset
form right
offset
there.
a little bit.
I mean, I wouldn't even
So
be
it's-
opposed to that. I wouldn't be opposed to that vertical break gave you more room to the inside, but then you would be violating even more setback, which may become an issue for you. I mean, you still have to go for a special exception on that part. But that break, I think, would make this a more honest addition to an addition to an addition. An addition.
Right.
Did your redesign, based on our comments, trigger, God, that's fine.
No, the first draft in the rear, because we're so,
Okay,
the house is situated very tightly to the rear. The first draft did have a special exception.
But the only thing I think that's changed is that originally we were kind of making this smaller here, but it would have made the back not look as square, which would have really affected the way in which you would see the house from the back. It would have looked kind of odd, I think. So that's why we squared it.
We cleaned up that back corner a little bit, but I understand what you're saying by offsetting. English.
Yeah, either offset it in or offset it out.
Sure.
Just some sort of form break there would be a more natural addition to the house. 'Cause you're
Okay.
Not trying to match planes. And I'm sure you know, Christine, how hard it is.
They
to
never
get-
really match up on that yet.
Yes, thank you for all of the changes that you've incorporated into this greatly improved design. All the previous speakers were on the mark, I think, in their comments. Could we go to the drawing of the front elevation, that is the street elevation?
that's correct.
There was, and also, just so everybody knows, You graciously invited me over to have a discussion about this. After prior to this tonight, and you've obviously taken to heart some of the things I suggested there. And one of which was acknowledging the fact that and again, back to Gabrielle's comment about coming and telling your story as part of it. And one of the things you told me that night was, it is the 1980s edition that sold you on the house.
See,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah, that was the piece of the architecture of this house that made this Holland Hills house your house,
That's right.
right?
And
So,
the rest of the neighborhood, everyone says, oh, you live in that house. Because the window, you know, it's this
it's-
weird
it's a very
trapezoid window.
distinctive- Yeah.
It's got great street.
I
view.
agree, it screams 1980s. I might point out it's over 40 years old, it's getting close.
I am
to-
over 40 years old.
So anyway, but, and one of the suggestions I made was that, that maybe that the design of the new family room edition should take its inspiration from the 1980s edition and not pretend to be a Goodman on the total opposite end of the building. I think you've handled that very well. I like
And
the
actually,
fact
that
they-
edition is not 80s. That edition is early 70s.
Early 70s.
So it's closer to.
I think it reminds me of the Cape, you know, like a
Yeah.
beach house. I don't know, takes me back.
Anyway, that being as it's, having said that, the one thing that struck me as a bit incongruous is kind of the Holland Hills proportions of the windows in the new edition. And had you thought about using a large piece of glass like in the 1970s edition
Okay.
in lieu of that, and then a thinner header windows, and then the transom
Okay.
light above it. And again, that's my suggestion that you can take for what it is.
I like that idea.
Is that, you know, be a little more honest about acknowledging the significance of the first edition to your love for the house. And that, you know, in other words, don't pretend you're sticking Holland Hills windows in something that's clearly not
Yeah.
Early
Yeah, that
Holland
makes
Hills style. And so that's just the only suggestion I would make to the addition. And I second and endorse Mr. Klinsky's recommendation, breaking the plane slightly. With the new addition with the shed roof meets with the extended gable and that earlier addition. But generally, I think this is much improved.
Great.
I think you listened to us very carefully and put a lot of thought into the design. I think it's evolved in a very positive direction.
Thank you.
I'll say, I actually like that the edition has a play on both Holland Hills and the new edition. I think that's trying to take notes from both.
So I'm one vote, he's one
Well,
vote.
but I'm
A
not,
whole bunch of
I-
votes yet.
well, I agree with everything that's been said before. I think as Kelly, you again find a way to work for our comments, right? Because I think that was the challenge we saw in this home is it's got these existing additions and now you need to grow it for a valid reason. And so it's like, how do you do this in a way that doesn't overwhelm the original structure? And I think trying to do something that does play off the prior additions in a way that kind of speaks to them in a more harmonious way really works. I think the suggestions by Mr. Kalinsky in particular about adding those planes that he said in a way that I'm like, those flat sides are like, okay, that's the only thing that was bothering me, but it's also in the back, so I'm less concerned about it. Not that it isn't important, but from my perspective, when we saw it the first time, it was just, the house became so big structurally that it just felt like it would overwhelm the block. And I think definitely now with the tweaks and elements you've added, it becomes a little bit more a dialogue going on. And my thoughts about the windows, I could go with John's perspective too, but it just shows how subjective when you get to the nitty gritty of preservation of interpreting, how do you make something compatible? Do you make it too close to the original or do you try to make it such a blend? Honestly, in the end, it's got to look good too. So I can see John's argument that it'd be more akin to what it's touching to instead of creating too much of that reflection there. But that's really only my major comments because I think the provisions from that and everyone else's thoughts, we've gotten into something that's much more I think, harmonious with all the additions there. I don't know if there are any other members.
If we could get a matching window, I have no idea the cost, probably ridiculous, of the window that we have, wouldn't that mirroring of the current window with the new addition actually take your eye kind of away from there to notice the Holland Hills original windows? I mean, it kind of calms down that look. I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but if that window were replicated instead of a
Mirroring on the
transom,
side and flip it to the
a
other
transom
side.
window, then what we have is much more of like the Holland Hills traditional windows and then just the same two windows in the addition.
You are an artist.
Don't you think?
To notice that, I think that's a good point. Because you have the horizontality of the original windows, not competing with any horizontal elements on the other side, so.
That window center on them, the one in the middle, or is it?
I think, I like that idea, Judy. I think we can fiddle around
It
this.
shouldn't. Yeah, I'm trying to tell from looking at it, create a face or if it's slightly off.
Slightly off nose too.
True.
I just have one comment, actually, for you, Miss Kelly. I'm new to the board. I've only been here less than 6 months, but I've seen a lot of you. And I really appreciate that you take our comments to heart without being offended. Like some architects, we're not making any suggestions on your skill as a designer. And I just think that it's been really pleasurable working with you in a collaborative way. And I think that I don't know, I just really appreciate that you obviously are able to provide for your clients the confidence that you can come before us. And I think it's been really enjoyable. So I think you've been doing a really great job, kind of. I hope more architects can see you when they watch our meetings and understand that like it really is a collaboration and anyway. Set the bar high.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And 40 years in this industry, I've learned a lot as well. And I really like this board a lot. So thank you for all your comments. I really appreciate them.
One of the things that's come out of this process for me, and we've talked about this, Christine and I, because we've both been presidents of the Civic Association and been on the DR, our own design review. So we're really committed to the community. Some of you have never been to the community. And even though I know you live far away from us, we would love it if we could schedule some sort of just for you kind of a tour of the neighborhood and maybe go into some houses. We do this on an ad hoc basis when university students, architecture students want to come through. And I think the current board would be happy to try to figure out if there's an interest, an appetite for some of you or all of you to do that, just to be aware of it since you do so many, you see so many of our plans for renovation. I think it would be great if you had a chance to just get an idea of what's going on in the
We've
neighborhood.
definitely done site visits in the past. The big challenge with getting us out there is that if you have more than 2 of us at a time, it becomes a public meeting.
Yeah.
So for example, we had another application, I think 2 members went out. So I think that's a very gracious offer. And I know we have some folks that are in the thick of it, but yes, definitely. And some members actually.
They have our garden days.
Yeah.
Holland Hills has garden days when they open up homes, correct?
Well, we have a garden tour, house and garden tour every couple of years. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
well,
coming up.
And some of the board members served on the committee that put together the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ignorance.
That's been my problem. I've never been able to get on that.
Oh, okay.
But some of the board members did thankfully get to participate in the group to help form that. But there are some of us that I've only gotten to enjoy it from my car. Because if I started wandering around houses like John does, I don't know what would happen to me. But it's a very gracious offer. That perhaps we can definitely work with Daniel in the future to organize something like that, to see some of the homes. I think we'd help some members get an understanding of the neighborhood that we see a lot of now.
Well, I mean, if you did piggyback on an existing thing where we were doing it with architecture students or something, it would not be something we were doing formally for you. We would be just having an architecture day. I mean, there may be ways
I
to
would
deal with it.
suggest obviously make sure that let Daniel know when any of those opportunities arise. And I think he's been able to share when other of our historic overlay districts have want to ask for members to come for site visits, because it really is more of a making sure we don't
Sure.
unintentionally create a
Yeah.
meeting
Yeah.
that we gather. It really is, that is the trick.
Right, I understand. I'm on a couple of boards too, so I completely understand.
Yeah, if there aren't any other comments, I think hopefully we get enough feedback and we'll be seeing you in the near future. Well, we didn't ask you anything about the setback, I suppose, no one, because the setback obviously is also required.
Right, but I have another project that has a special exception. So as I understand from Daniel, is that next time we come back, we'll have two applications, one for the design and one for the recommendation. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear to
Right.
members that if it comes back, there's the recommendation for a special exception and then the application. Obviously, we would do the recommendation first because we wouldn't want to approve a design that required a setback recommendation from us that we weren't going to potentially give. So I just want to make that clear if there's any members having comments or questions on that.
Great, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, that takes us out of items for workshop and rolls us into board and staff items. Well, this is a new update from Fairfax. Let's go into our board and staff items. First, the board and staff item is review and action on approval of the previous month's minutes from the March 14, 2024 meeting. And then as well for the March 18, 2024 meeting. You'll note there are two separate motions because we're paying two separate clerks. So, there are no comments on those, and I would entertain a motion. Mr. Zelman.
Mr. Chairman, I move the ARB approve the March 14, 2024 meeting minutes and pay the clerk Ryan Johnson.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Murray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are you in favor? Okay. Any opposition?
Aye.
Abstentions. All right, motion carries. All right, for March 18th.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Mang.
I move that the ARB approve the March 18th, 2024 meeting minutes and pay the clerk, Corinne Bebeck.
All right, is there a second? Second. So we'll beat you there. Seconded by Ms. Orr. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. All right, that takes us out of those. For our treasurer's report, we have an ending balance as of March 31st of $16,000 and $16,064.26. Daniel, any comments on that, or is that? Nope. All right, unless you need me to, oh, no, you've got the reimbursement process. I'll bring it up there. That that takes us into administrative request for financial support refreshments for fall 2024 NAPC camp training.
Yes, so as I've discussed in the past few months, staff has coordinated with DHR this year instead of doing CLG training like they've done on an annual or semi-annual basis. They're coordinating with NAPC to host 3 different camp sessions. Fairfax County is hosting the Northern Virginia training. We're committed to that. We had to submit a grant application, but it was like a guaranteed disbursement that will come. And the grant covers the all of the travel expenses and fees associated with 3 of NAPC's staff traveling and 6 sessions. You also get a certificate of completion and AIA or any other credits.
You got your training for the year.
Yes, so if you attend in the fall, we're targeting October, November.
We all do it?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's not considered a meeting?
We will cross that hurdle. I don't think so because there's a fee associated. It's not technically a public meeting.
There we go. All Hills can just charge us thousands.
No, hold me to that. This is
No,
a
I know.
very specific situation. And we
Wins me out.
built into the grant because we're anticipating this being a highly attended or popular event because of the proximity of other boards around us. There's a coverage over the normal amount that the camp training will cover, that the grant's covering. But to host and coordinate that, we need to ask the ARB if you all would financially support refreshments for the day, because that is not something that can come out of our budget. I would just like to clarify that in the past, recent past, we have asked the other BAC that DPD supports for much more financial support for several different projects that the ARB has not supported.
This is precedent. We've done this in the deep, dark past.
Perfect. That's great. So I have drafted a motion, or we have an approximate budget of up to 500 that we can work within. So
This is coffee, breakfast.
morning snacks, afternoon snacks, coffee, drinks, yes.
Snacks and drinks.
Yes. We are not
No.
crazy. It's not a continental spread because I have to pick all of this up and clean it up.
Exactly. Okay.
Where are we going to be? Where is it going to be?
We have a space reserved in the Heritage Building across the street where planning division works out of. So there's a large training room that is much more updated than any of the rooms here that we regularly meet in. So we're anticipating 50 to 80 attendees.
Are you programming slots for all ARB members or?
Mhm.
Okay.
There's a preference for ARB, History Commission, and Planning Division Heritage Resources staff.
It's a single day.
Your single day 9 to 5 sort of.
Yep,
Crash course.
Is 500 enough?
we believe so, and
Okay, 'cause-
they'll make it work.
Okay, well, I think this board could afford more, and I know that Roshani Pereira, your financial person, would be happy if you made it up to like 1,000 or 750
Yes.
in case you go over.
Yes, so whatever, this is the part where you all can discuss how much money you want to spend on this event, but any motion needs to include the phrasing
What-
and expenditure up to. the
What's the attendance looking like? What are we talking about?
We have 50 to 80, it's like
We
very.
better make sure we have coffee.
Yeah.
That's all, I mean, that's all I gotta say. Like, if we don't, that's just disrespectful.
The amount that I suggested, there is a lot of cushion in there. We did a lot of.
Okay.
Need some gluten dairy free.
So a diverse range of diet-friendly options. Okay, Mr. Zellman's gonna get some motion.
Sure, I'll move the ARB approve an expenditure of up to $750 for refreshments at the fall 2024 Navy meeting. I'll second it.
Oh, Mr. Clancy got in second and first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
2 croissants per ARB member.
That's why you were gonna put your hand up. So you were gonna put in there.
Didn't ask her.
All right.
Something you deal with regularly?
Daniel, we don't have a confirmed date yet, right?
You know,
No, we don't. We're targeting fall. We have proposed a date that I do not want to say on the record because I do not know who it is, but fall October is where we're aiming for. Weekday.
You're retired.
So-
You're retired.
for members to attend, we basically need to plan on taking the day off, and it's a full,
No,
It would be it's a full day.
okay.
I know, I'm kidding.
But the benefit is that if you attend, I automatically log your participation for next year's CLG report. We also get to, as a host, we have some flexibility in the courses that can be selected. So we're going to try to cater things to Northern Virginia, based on the jurisdiction that we.
All right, that takes us on to changes in ARB member reimbursement process. For context, we've been doing motions to reimburse members for certain expenses. There has been some snarls that Daniel has encountered in paying our 2 recent members. So Daniel, can you give us some details on how we're?
Yes, there's a more detailed explanation in the Heritage Resources Branch update, but I wanted to make sure we went over this. I met with the DPD financial team and have been informed that there were I don't know how recent, there were changes to the countywide Department of Finance process for reimbursements. And there are audit requirements that have to be honored for any financial reimbursement. So as we've discussed previously, this board has the power to spend its money how it chooses to spend. The issue that we run into is the audit financial paperwork side of those reimbursements. So the recommendation moving forward is for if the board is going to approve expenditures over the allotted $300 per member per fiscal year, that the motion be passed in a way that it is clearly covering training costs, because then our department financial team can process that reimbursement in a different way. If it's continuing education or training expenditure. And I have that motion language drafted and ready for when we need to use it. The issue we've run into, and I spoke about this with Mr. Burns, is the board approved an amount and the receipts to support that request included travel, which then changed the classification from a volunteer BAC member reimbursement to a county employee reimbursement. And this will happen in the future for anyone that wants travel to be part of that justification, because our department and the county finance department have to protect themselves from a future internal or external audit. So if travel is included at all as supporting documentation, you have to have deputy county executive approval before the request is made. Form has to be filled out, and then you have to request the motion. Then you have to have county deputy executive approval on the completed expenditure form with receipts for everything that you spent money on during that trip. And so a lot of steps, which is why the recommendation moving forward is to make a request covering training expenditures, whatever that amount is. If any members wish to go above and beyond, I have the whole process figured out now, so we will not have any hiccups, hopefully moving forward. But that is a change from what was happening previously, because the board would just approve an amount, and then the member would sign a form, and the chair would sign it, and then the reimbursement would happen. It is not that straightforward, unfortunately. Are there any questions?
Could I resubmit my form with different documentation to expedite matters?
We may have to do that if the path that is being followed does not. It's flagged, it's back in the system, so if it's flagged again, we may have to revisit it.
And may I infer that international travel would be even more complicated? APT meeting this year is in Montreal.
So the way that it was explained to me is if the ARB is approving an expenditure of up to, let's say, $800 for a conference registration fee, and the receipt that you are submitting just is for the registration fee, that does not open up the question about travel. So, talking a very fine line there, it has to be very specific wording, motion. The problem that our financial team encountered was that there was a flight receipt, and so that was picked back by the county finance department. That is, we have a plan in place moving forward, but ultimately there's audit requirements that have to be met that we cannot change.
I think moving forward, though, if you want to request compensation for a training or a conference attendance that you're going to do, I think letting Daniel, at this point, me know as soon as possible so we can get the info. Daniel can say, yes, this is what we would need to know, or if this would tick the box, that would mean this would be more complicated. So the sooner we know, so that it's less of a, well, we'll prove it, we have no problem proving it because it makes sense, but then we find out that this accounting process that is more convoluted than we envisioned. It's going to create delays and actually reimbursing you all for the training efforts you undertook.
One last clarification or reminder, the ARB bylaws are written in a way that the expenditure has to have been spent by the member, and you're asking the board for a reimbursement. You cannot ask for an amount. So you have to spend the money up front and then ask for the reimbursement.
That's why a registration fee makes a lot of good sense, because you can spend that immediately. Any other Thank you, Daniel, for
Yes.
learning that process. Review coordination in the Lorton Laurel Hill MOA eligible district.
Yeah, so just to update all of you on some enhancements we've made behind the scenes, the Lorton Laurel Hill Memorandum of Agreement stipulates that the Virginia Department of Historic Resources and the Lorton Heritage Society are forwarded copies of all applications 30 days before the meeting at which action is scheduled. Staff was not previously forwarding those applications themselves. There was a process that it's long before I joined and long before my predecessor. And there's been change in membership for reviewers at both of those boards or agencies. So we are now forwarding all the applications ourselves to ensure that there is compliance with this MOA. And because of that, we have had to update the submission schedule for projects in the Lorton Laurel Hill MOA area. And so the website is currently updated, as is the submission table, and all of this explanation is on there for anyone who's looking at the ARB website with questions. We also communicated when asked. That backup is allowing us enough time to receive the application and process it and make sure that it gets to the review agencies that it is supposed to get to. There are recent instances in which that 30-day window, it does not have to be a true 30 days. It can be abbreviated if there is confirmation and agreement by the review agencies. So that happened with the mechanical improvements in building P5 of Lorton, because it had been reviewed as a tax credit review by VDHR. I spoke with the Lorton Heritage Society representatives, and they did not have any issues with it coming on the agenda in 30 days. So it's not hard and fast. There is some flexibility, but our general SOP is that we have to have it more than 30 days before the meeting, or it cannot be on the agenda until the next meeting. And there has been a change in leadership with the Lorton Heritage Society, so I do not know if we will expect comments or attendance, but that's definitely a possibility in a way that has not been happening.
Well, since we've had.
Are they a party listed in the MOA?
They are.
They
And
are, they
used to in
are,
the past attend quite more regularly.
um, I was involved in the kerfuffle in February. Because Sally Lyons and the History Commission is part of that group. They're a group that's struggling with membership. So and they're also way down there.
Yeah.
Sally in particular, she's down in Colchester.
Similar to the way I forward any memo that I received from VDHR, I've met with LHS, so if they want to respond via email, I will forward it to the ARB or provide it to you. The MOA does not require that the ARB act on their comments, but it is for your consideration before decision is made.
And we've considered them in the past during meetings, particularly when we were very busy in this area. Their comments were very insightful about things that they were concerned about. And if Daniel does provide that, I'll make sure when I go through the items for action, as part of that, I don't ever touch on it. I always ask for public comment, but I also would note if there were letters submitted as part of organizations or other groups as part of an application. We just don't get many of them. They are there. I will mention them in the order of operations. It just doesn't come up. All right. That takes unless there's any more comments on that. Thanks for straightening that out a bit more for us, Daniel. That takes it on the administrative and into discussion, updates, and reports.
Yes, I included a memo from the Park Authority and the administrative items this month. They are going to be renovating a shed that is located adjacent to the mill, in the Colvin Run Mill HOD. The shed was constructed in the 80s as a Boy Scout project, and they said it needs updating. So they're increasing the size from 100 square feet to 180 square feet, and all of the new materials will match the existing. So that memo included like rendering specifications. There's no permit required, so there's no ARB.
We've given them a hard time in the past for not telling us about things like this.
There wasn't a map I noted that didn't actually cite the location of the existing shed, and then it says beside the mill, but so maybe a map added to the pack? I mean, I don't know what, if we can't require them to submit anything, or
I
can we
would
suggest?
imagine we're not getting more materials, but I can pull one. I just didn't have time to before.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought accessory structures over 120 square feet did require.
250.
Why don't you suggest they get a bigger shed?
Yeah, 70 square feet, you could use that.
There's 80 square feet, probably be a little better, right?
I mean, there is a world in which if any member wants a memo written by the ARB to be returned, is an avenue, but kind of the only. Yeah, I think.
Being sending them a memo in response to their memo.
Yes.
Did they say anything about whether or not, how this fits in their general management plan for the operation? Site?
I think the memo talks about needing more storage space. So, I do know that ACB, the Archaeology Collections Branch, has been consulted because I heard about this project several months ago. Right, as it was happening, so it's been on the radar. As we've discussed previously, the Park Authority has a lot of responsibilities in some of their projects. So timelines, I don't know how soon this is happening. I heard about it.
So, what's the collections?
Yeah,
CAB. They did review it, because that was the only, there might be some additional clearing or leveling of the surface to expand this, and.
Right, I do not know enough about the parameters, but I know that they were discussing. And when I was told, I said, well, then if they require a permit, they have to come to the ARB. And then we received this memo and confirmation that a permit is. So they have an internal process that I'm sure is being satisfied without involvement from ACD. There's nothing else that,
Okay. Can I inquire?
yeah, you can definitely, I can provide Amy Wells's contact information.
Okay,
if
great.
you'd
Okay.
like to reach out.
Just,
Yeah.
okay. And you would hope that they would have checked with their own, okay.
One doesn't know with those guys.
Okay, and that's where I don't know enough to
I got
know,
a
but
big
I will
problem with
ask.
vultures. Okay. Comments on that one? Pocket Church accessibility ramp.
Ever be a agenda without the-
Yep.
The vestry has awarded the contract to Dovetail, and they're anticipating a start date of May 2024, so next month. As I have said for multiple months, approval that was issued by the ARB included a modification that the materials be available on site before construction for ARB review. So we're anticipating May or June. Whichever members of the board would like to go to public church and.
Only two at a time.
Correct, yes.
Towards the.
Steve and I are the two closest
We'll go down there.
together.
And I've shared this update.
We'll drive by on the way home tonight. Is it there already or not quite yet?
Not yet.
It's May start date.
Yeah,
Okay.
so my understanding is that they will have the materials, they'll let us know when they're there. And will convey that the ARB is satisfied before they start actual construction. They coordinated with ACD several months ago and did some archaeological testing and they've altered the footing foundation structure to be less invasive than what was reviewed and approved by the board, but the aesthetic design has not changed. So slowly but surely that is
Soon it might not be on the agenda.
correct. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about the wonderful monthly Heritage Resource Branch update.
Yes, so I included a printed out copy for all of you. This was in the administrative items folder. As I teased last month, this will be distributed monthly with meeting materials. This month is very thorough, much beefier than it will be in future months because you have never gotten one before. This is something it's modeled on what the History Commission receives from their liaison, like counterpart. So they
We went to doing that when we started having electronic meetings, having the staff report in our Ignite file. It was not something we were doing before COVID. Everybody's supposed to do it on the History Commission, all the committees.
So this is our way of informing you on the work that we're doing and involved with. So there is a lot of background information, and some of these projects have not been talked about since grant was applied for, or so I can answer any questions that anyone has. It will be brief.
Questions at the moment? I mean, I will say this is awesome. You know, great. And I'm glad we got both those applications in for the grants too, just to speak to 2 items on there. I penned 2 letters for Daniel to send along with the cost sharing one. So hopefully it seems like we're the darling down there for Richmond. So maybe we'll get more of that. But yeah, thank you for putting this together. And obviously, if we have questions, we can just send an email directly to you. Perfect.
I liked your putting the cast of characters at the beginning.
Oh, Mr. Burns, sorry.
Yeah, the Mid-Century Modern Countywide Survey, is that linked to the grant?
That link is to the project information page. We just got the first draft internally, so there's not one that's publicly available.
Is there one that's available to members of the ARB?
I can ask.
I was gonna say,
I can say, it is Dovetail.
Dovetail Cultural Resource Group.
Yes, so that was a cost share grant that's being managed by DHR. So they're managing the day-to-day survey. There was heavy involvement. There was a list of like approximately 150 it was like a targeted survey, not countywide. The first draft has 50, at least 50 resources recommended eligible for listing in the National Register. So these,
Dovetail will ask to do this.
so we,
Well, even just to know the 150 that were on the initial list would be helpful.
yeah, I can try to pull that together. Yes.
and that's why you see we have the cost share grant for the postmodern. It's basically jumping from this one, we're kind of moving right into another. We're trying to get ahead of the problem we're running into right now with the amount of architecture we have that's under threat. So at least that's Daniel and the Heritage staff's hope. So there are no other questions on that one. We go to old business. The solar installation at the workhouse site visit. My understanding is Mr. Plumpy visited. Did anyone else? Or just Mr. Plumpy?
Yeah, Daniel was there. Yeah, yes. Daniel was there. And it was probably one of the coldest last days we had with the wind and everything. It was a wonderful time. In fact, it was so windy that it broke the guy's little foam core sheet that he had to hold up as a sample of the size of the solar panels. Generally, because I think that it was successful. All the members of the county that needed to be there that have the money to do it, that is contributed to the vendor. And generally there'll be, I don't know if there's a drawing or a plan, Daniel, that you have, but they'd be coming in from the Lorton Road entrance. Our suggestion was is to put it between the elm trees that are pretty small now. This is a 2 to 3 year exhibit. They would be parallel 123, and on one side would be the solar panel, and the other side would be an artist panel. These panels are, I think, 5 by 10, or 4.5 by 10. That'd be the size of them. We saw something before that was bottom was cortan, the other was burnt wood. I forget the Japanese the texturing of the wood. So when they blacken the wood, that was the top part of it. So it's kind of a 1/4, 3/4. Bottom fourth would be cortan steel. And they'll come back, I think, for approval because they need to get this going or else they'll lose their funding. I think when we were together the last time, I reiterated the fact that it seemed like everybody was in agreement with a certain style. The solar panels would be on one side of them. There'd be 6 of these panels kind of going on as you drive into the area. What the challenge is in the site, what's interesting is space to put them because you got utilities. Bunny Man has an easement that's along 123 that is an extension of the parking lot by Bunny Man that they can do performances there, such as tents and so forth on a temporary basis along 123 at the entrance of Lorton. So we can't put them there, which would be ideal. Maybe it's a negotiation with Bunny Man Brewery to see if that could happen, but right now there's limited space, which is interesting. And we thought, hey, there's plenty of space out there. There were some thoughts to put it by the ball field on the other end of the property, not in the ball field, but by the ends of the buildings there. But it was underwhelming, to say the least. So I think my objective was going out there as a resident of ARB and of the board member of the workhouse was to do it so that people from 123 can have a glimpse of it as they're going 90 miles an hour passing. But then also as they enter the site, which Lorton is it looks like it's probably 50-50, maybe more people enter from the Lorton Road. It's a little bit safer. You have to make the U-turn into the property at the other entrance, coming from the south. But it was, it seemed like it would be, I think, a good thing, and it has adequate sun and so forth. So you'll probably see it in May. No, it's not. Excuse me, in June. They'll submit in May for June approval, I think. So generally, that's pretty much all I can say. I wish Dana, again, I don't know if you have a map of Lorton there or not, the Lorton Workhouse, but if you don't, no big deal. But I think it seemed to be agreeable to everybody that it was a good, decent shot to put it there. So that's all.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts?
And I will say one thing. I'm looking right now to let you guys know that the Bunny Man Brewery, this is specifically for our attorney on the board. BrewWorks is May 18th, which is the week after our board. So the 18th. So the plan is on a Saturday. So that's the open house. That's the first time it'll open up. And you're going to see what we approved with the storm management facility at the end of the quad. That's along 123. I will say this, it's very noisy there because 123 is a noisy road. So, so a lot of music needs to drown out 123. Just good. But anyways, it seems they got it together between and I think this is public record, is the workhouse is under some financial strain for as a board member. I just broadcast that. It just needs some shot in the arm, so it doesn't die on the vine. So it's still, in a tenuous situation right now after 20 years. So more beer drunk is a great thing because it gives them the lease, so they can keep on paying their lease and so forth. But Anyways, so that's all I have. I think you're gonna see some others. Oh, the other thing you'll see, remember that wonderful exhaust fan for the Barnum Brewery, the big metal appendage? It is big and it's there. But it's whatever. But can't wait to see the good sweet smells of the kitchen come out. So we'll see. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. That takes us out of old business, or is there any new other business from members? None.
Do we have any update on Mr. Jabori and his non-compliant construction? No. Okay, and that prompted me to go and look at projects we've approved in Holland Hills. See if what's getting built is what we approved, and not in every case. And so the question I want to raise tonight is, how far do we want to go in policing people building what was approved? The two cases in Holland Hills, one was the very first one we approved on a split vote. They decided that they wanted to put their big Tesla panel right at the front of the house next to the front door. And it's there. And they also moved the electric meter so that it's right at the front of the house by the front door. And I was looking at it and photographed it, of course, the owner pops out. What are you doing this? We had a discussion with Dale. And she remembered me. I told her, I said, well, I was the one who said, I remember. Yes, it's okay. So anyway, we had a cordial discussion about that. And I said, well, why did you make that change? And her explanation was she didn't want all that electronic energy near her children. And she wanted to put
Which the off-gassing of her new construction is.
well, okay, well, whatever. That was her explanation. That was the one. The other one was the chap on it's a parallel sport month, you know, it's not good. Or whatever. It's just a chap who had an addition off the left side of his house that was right up against the side setback. And he wanted the side setback grandfathered where it already was. The county said, no, if you take it down, you've got to go back to the side yard setback. And we had all sorts of discussion about that. He ended up with the design that we approved, and he had two Holland Hills looking windows in the second story of that in the drawings and all looked like Holland Hills windows, 2.5 or 3 inch wide frames around the windows and all. But it's under construction now, and what's up, it's like 8 inches all the way around. So it's like there's Holland Hills window frame on steroids. I thought, well, maybe that's just they put them in and the trim will cover that. No, the siding is up and they're there. So that's another one that's not what we intended, but it's there. And so the question I'll raise is, does anybody else want to go and look at things in their jurisdictions and to see if that's happening? And to what extent do we want to police and how might we do that?
When I was working for cities, kind of the stance we took was, does the board want changes? If it's something that we didn't approve, but we would approve if it was in front of us, okay, maybe we don't. I mean, it would just be paperwork at that point, getting new revised drawings, getting them stamped. But if it's something that the board feels is egregious and we want the property owner to make changes, and we feel like we have enough documentation that you could, speaking to why we're so particular in the first place without documentation, then yeah, maybe that is something the board wants to take people to come back and say, this isn't what we approved, we want you to do changes. I think that it's not the best PR move for the board. It gets a lot of negative pushback. But I think that the result could be that people take us more seriously and do the work according to the drawings. They see their neighbors coming back.
Well, before you jump in, Joe, I know Mr. Zoner would add something too.
Well, always big on consistency. So what I might suggest, it's my understanding that there's a current pending project that's being reviewed. And Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong. and that there may be some sort of process being developed to determine how the ARB is going to handle non-compliant projects that have been approved. And, you know, I would say I certainly agree that it's a problem we should address, but maybe have that process and then apply that to other properties that we think are not in conformance with what
We need to know the instruments that we actually have available
And we
to
could
us.
allow staff level amendments, so if it's something the board thinks we would approve, maybe, again, we're putting more work on Daniel's plate, we could say, Daniel, can you please retroactively approve these changes? And then the ones that the board feels want changes, have them come before. But I think what the impetus would be, are we driving around in our free time, or is this a sign off requirement through the Department of Buildings with Fairfax that has a check mark that says, you know, ARB needs to see a photograph of the completed work. Or, I don't think we have enough staff resources right now to go drive around looking at every completed project, but maybe we could start with a photograph and then Daniel, oh, this looks really wrong. We need to do a site visit.
Oh, you look like you got
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you said there exactly. You know, if the police, it is great in some kind of form or whatever, you go around and, or somebody goes around and do it. But the problem is, I see is, I mean, what's the repercussions? They go, hey, fine, great. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take down my siding and hang new siding to give you a 2-inch frame around the window or 4-inch frame around the window. That was 8 inches installed. I think the only thing that, so the county needs to have some kind of penalty or something. Do you put a lien on the guy's house? Do you increase his tax bill? Which is, these things will not happen, but people are people. They'll just do it. There's no one out there unless even the health inspectors, when they go out and check things, oh, you made a modification. Oh, don't worry about it. Drywall will cover it. You know, so I that's a tough one. I mean, I would love to keep people accountable because it's very disturbing. And I keep bringing this up as we spend a lot of time in the evenings, and when we do something and that we approve something that's not done the way it is, it's like we're wasting our time. And then you start to think about, okay, what's the purpose of the board? Well, the purpose of the board is, most people understand it. Some people just like to cheat it, but I don't know. Yes, I wish there was a way that we could tie their hands.
There is a way.
Yeah, but what's the penalty?
The penalty is that they would not issue any more permits.
Yeah,
If the
but they already
building
got
had,
the permit.
if the building had an open violation, landmarks would not sign off on any future permits until
Yeah,
that was resolved, unless
but-
it was a life safety.
And I think the challenge we're gonna run into is that while that was the process there, I don't know if the county's process is going to afford us that level of autonomy.
Right.
Hence why I think Mr. Zellman's comment about, we have one currently going through the situation. I think the results and the process that's going through there will be more informative. I mean, obviously, folks are welcome to, in the HODs near them, to point out ones that we've noticed that. But this is something we brought up before with, what I brought up with Leanna before she stepped down, was having qualified permit reviewers who are reviewing these projects that are in HODs know what to look for. That's part of the problem, is we don't have that, and that requires staffing actions. That requires having someone who, is going to be able to do that. So some of it's working within the mechanics that the county has, and that's where I think Daniel and Jonathan are doing huge efforts to try to solve that. But part of it is unraveling it to figure out where can we, interject, because as Joe pointed out, maybe we don't have the ability to deny them a permit. And even if we did deny them a permit to this board, they could request to be overturned by the Board of Supervisors. If we said, well, we're not going to approve your next project because you didn't follow the rules last time, if it's the same property we're talking about here in that situation. And I think I was going to use this, I'll use this to build on a comment I was going to make that was only somewhat related, and kind of building on Mr. Zellman's consistency comment, to emphasize that obviously we want to be consistent. But the other thing is we need to be consistent in how we comport ourselves too, because these are recorded meetings. And we have applicants who do return for multiple projects at multiple locations. And if one of their projects does have violations, that is a project that has violations, but if we don't conduct ourselves in a way on these recordings that would suggest that we are biasing ourselves, that can that can make a case against us. We need to make sure that we are being completely fair for every project that comes in, recognizing that some of these projects get the same person over and over again. You know, lots of the HODs have the same folks that come in doing projects. And even if we have current violations that are being looked at, we can't let that bias our process for what we have in front of us. So that, I'm not saying that because anything's happened from that, but just that we have these violation efforts underway. I want to make sure that when we say something in here, we recognize it's being, particularly it's being recorded so someone can go back and watch us. We don't want someone to suggest that we're not, you know, being, you know, consistent with how we treat everything across the board. We have a protracted way of saying, be careful, we're being recorded, but that's kind of what I was going at there. Daniel, I don't know if you have any other observations on this, because I think you have more insight to what you as staff can and can't do on.
Some very high level answers. And this is a topic that was raised in September. There was a motion that the board passed to authorizing staff to look at enforcement possibilities in other jurisdictions. So that is something that we are working through. As you all know, there is a lot of state or bureaucracy that happens in the county for any sort of change. We do have an active investigation happening with a property in one of the HODs that was raised in the last year. In dealing with that, we being Heritage Resources staff, have met with Land Development Services staff, Office of the County Attorney, zoning official, and are trying to look at the tools that are currently in our arsenal and the way that they can be used to enforce and ensure compliance with ARB decisions and approvals. And the unfortunate answer is a lot of those tools are still in the trial phase. So what we are investigating is if we are monitoring when inspections are being scheduled, possibility of providing inspectors with a list of things to ensure that those are according to the permit plans. There is an understanding that conditions during construction are going to change to some degree from what is on the plans, but there are easy to identify things that the ARB is approving with the modification. So that modification is something that must be done. So we're kind of thinking through that way. Unfortunately, the priority for building inspectors is not the aesthetic of the building, it's health and safety and code compliance. So that if there's changes being made, as long as they are following the code, those are usually being approved. So we're trying to look at how we can insert ourselves in these other steps of the process after the permit is issued. There is a reality in which inspections would not be passed. Inspection is not passed, and then that opens an investigation under the construction code. Those are the things that have to be rectified before that inspection can be passed. So I don't know how practical or true that is, but that seems to be the current mechanism that we're leaning towards with this process that is in place for the county. We are trying. I know that it seems very, very slow, but there's a lot of conversation happening behind the scenes. And as you all know, Virginia is a bill and rule state, and there is a very, very strong emphasis on property rights. Sometimes to the detriment of historic resources. So we are working in that framework and trying to work within county processes to ensure that things are being followed. As much as I can say without sounding like I'm just saying a lot of work.
It would be nice, I mean, great if like there could be a inspector that was a staff person with you.
I agree, but I have been told that the
Another
current
salary.
inspector stock is very, very understaffed. A certain number of properties that have to be inspected inspected and their priority is not ARB conformance. Unfortunately, that is the mindset that we're working in, but the positive news is that all of the people in decision-making positions that we are meeting with are receptive to what we are saying. There are just a lot of limitations and implications of any sort of change, like setting off ripples.
There isn't a new DPD chief yet, is there?
No, there's.
Okay, because that was one of the things I've been waiting on is when Leanna stepped down, I've tried to set up meetings with DPD and chiefs since I've been chair, and even when it's vice chair with John, we've done it. And this would be one of the topics. And that's one other way that obviously we can continue to bring it to DPD's awareness, because I don't doubt that Daniel and Jonathan are doing everything. So if we can emphasize to them that they need to make it a priority. And the same goes to obviously your supervisors emphasizing, hey, things are not being done correctly.
I had a meeting with the acting Chris Caperton and Denise Dressel on a totally different subject. And Denise told me that Daniel and Jonathan have been doing nothing but ARB stuff recently. So that made me very happy because we've had so many years of ARB being put off to the side. So I'm very happy that it's recognized that we need to get all these things straightened out. And I appreciate how much you've got done.
I met with my supervisor for appointment being on this request, Dan Stork, and talked to him, and he was looking for an education as to what we do, what our needs were. Staff, money, staff.
I also had a meeting with Supervisor Stork. And he said, do you guys have what you need? That's what he asked. I said, no. And I said, we've had recent hires on the staff side. That only brought us up to the level of staff that we should have had before the Holland Hills HOD came in. Holland Hills essentially doubled their workload. So even though they've added staff, they're very on that.
Because Holland Hills is in his area, right?
Yes. His office is in walking distance. Well aware of it. And he hosted all of the meetings with the ARB. Jason and you were in forming, Annalise, and forming up the HOD. So he was well aware of that. And I explained to him that in other jurisdictions, they will have a code inspector specifically who goes out to look at the historic properties that are under construction. And that person has extra training and this, that, and the other thing. I said, it's, you don't have to get everybody trained in it. You just need the one person who's the person that gets all of those jobs to inspect. And I used Arlington County as the example where they have a dedicated code inspector just for historic properties.
They wouldn't even need to be trained because they would have your approvals in hand. All they have to do is look at what you approved.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it doesn't even have to be that high of bar.
it would be really helpful for that person to have had some experience with historic.
In New York,
Because
we have masters in inspectors or preservationists. I don't think you're going to find a preservation inspector, but you might. We could find one from another city, or we could find one with a high,
And that's at least begin to set out that ethic. But anyway, my supervisor, I'm sure will agree, was very supportive of what we're trying to do. He gets a lot of feedback from Holland Hills neighbors in his district about whether or not this is working or not. And so I don't know what they've been telling them. All I can tell you is what Steve and I shared with them. Now, the purpose of sharing that with you all is you all have district supervisors you can go talk to as well. And years ago, when Rachel Ward, is she still the deputy county administrator? Okay, all right. She may have, anyway, she was the number 2 person to the county executive. And she was a licensed architect. So we said, hey, what the heck, So the 3 of us went off to see her and all. And what she told us is in the end, you can talk all you want to staff and staff can be supportive and all. He said, but if you really want to get something done, you need to have members of the board of supervisors take a personal interest in it. Then things begin to happen. comments, just get a chance to talk to your individual district supervisors. Let them know.
And I will say this is something that came up with Supervisor Alcorn when we talked about some of the Lake Ann heating and cooling situations, that if there was a situation of multiple applications, just similar to Hall Hills, he asked me that question too. When it was at the winter market at Lake Ann, it was not a formal meeting, like, do you have everything you need? And I said, no, Hall Hills is drowning us with reviews, so we are staff constrained, but the same would be if Lake Ann starts coming to us with multiple different proposals for HVAC situations, like even if we found a way to approve these, we didn't have to make sure they're being done correctly.
Not to criteria.
There's lots at Lake Ann that isn't done correctly. So it's one of those, like, so yes, I absolutely support John saying, say hi to your county supervisor. All right. Thoughts and or comments? Oh, yes, Samantha.
Speaking about
You're back.
And,
Oh,
yes,
yes.
so, last meeting I updated that the rest, I voting on the referendum did not get passed. So all the residents still need to keep using the relay. And, April 4th, the relay co-op release the latest news, they are proceeding the maintenance plan. So they are committed to have relay up and running this summer. So that's one part of the thing. The other part of the thing, my understanding from design review board is, by now, all the cluster should already have the HVAC design review guideline updated into their own individual cluster design review guideline. That's my understanding by now. That's about 2 months ago. Is only Washington Plaza and the Waterview cluster have that done, but the other 4 cluster is in process of updating. My understanding, I thought they're gonna see a lot of HVAC, getting the medical exemption to install the individual HVAC units, like those kind of projects, right? Not, my understanding is only one application last month. So probably things is not really going that.
Potentially.
Yeah,
That's
that's the update.
a good update. Yeah, those are good updates.
Yes.
All right. The other new business. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
It's always in order. All those in favor?
Wow.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
And so adjourned. 2 hours.
Take care.
See
I see you all.
We found a way to add more time.
Daniel?
Well, we cut multiple reviews out. So.
Yeah.
Do you ever print these double-sided, or do you purposely not do it?
I